Well, good evening, everyone. It is so awesome to see you all again. I am so excited for these two episodes that we are going to be talking about in the Sandman, which is Basic Binges, part of Nom Talk Network. My name is Jordyn Orozco, and I'm so happy to join you all tonight. I just wanted to introduce our lovely guests for the evening. We have Bill. Bill, it's so awesome to see you again. Thank you. I feel like you're my journeyman on the Sandman journey, and it's so good to see you. And Jefferson, it is awesome to see you. I'm so excited to talk about these episodes with you because I know you said you're really excited to talk about episodes 5 and 6. And I'm excited to talk about 6. So here we are. We're going to be in. Tonight, I'm enjoying a lovely little Mai Tai, my little Yeti, so it stays cool for the entire hour that we're here. Other than that, that's all I'm enjoying tonight. So I'll go to Jefferson. What are you enjoying tonight?
How is audio real quick? I'm on a new setup. How is it right now?
I think you're good.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Sounds fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. And your mic is red, which is amazing.
It is red, yeah. Is there feedback? Just wondering.
I can hear myself.
You can hear yourself. Let me put on my headphones.
It's okay. I'll go to Bill. Bill, what are we enjoying tonight? What do we got
appropriate for this one? Rather than the Coke Zeros, I've got one on standby over here. We've gone to a 20-something-year-old tawny port right now because when we're going episode 5 and 6, let's do this.
That sounds lovely. It sounds amazing. It sounds beautiful. Yeah, these are two. I think these are two of the most amazing episodes in the entire series. I think these two episodes made the series for me, and that's saying a lot. Usually, I have to be hooked within the first 3 episodes before I watch the entire thing. But as we've discussed before, they just kind of keep you, going in, doing all that. And so I'm really excited to talk about these. Let's go to Jefferson. What are you enjoying with your red mic?
I am not snacking on anything, but I'm snacking on a really good book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Sandman by
heard of it.
By Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I'm snacking on. Oh, and water, I guess.
Well, nice. Well, I'm so excited to have you all here. And so as if you haven't already guessed it, we're talking about the Sandman episodes 5 and 6. Now, these are, like I was telling Bill, these are my favorite episodes of the entire series. And so episode 5, which is 24/7, and episode 6, which is going to be called The Sound of Her Wings, was my favorite episode. And it was probably one of the most emotional episodes in the entire series. And so we'll be talking about both of these. And so I know, Jefferson, we missed you on the last one where we had the previous 2. And I'm really excited to hear about how you have experienced 24/7 in the books versus how you experienced it in this series. So let's start with you, since you're a little bit more well-versed with the universe. How did the episode compare to the comics? And we'll talk about episode 5, 24/7.
Do you want to sum up what happened first?
Oh, sure. I mean, yes. Ugh. How do you sum it up?
How do you sum that up? I guess
So yeah. So let me pull up my notes because I have notes because I am kind of well prepared, but not really well prepared. So John Dee, who plays David, was basically has Dream's jewel, which is the red jewel that he uses to I don't want to say manipulate, but sort of controls people's sort of dreams and how they interact with the world. Well, he gets a hold of it and finds out that his mother, who stole it originally from Dream, basically John Dee put a spell on it in a way where he's the only person that can use it. And the way that he uses it is he how do I say this? He excuses his actions by saying that he took away people's ability to lie and reveal the truths in which we are, in which we truly feel. And so he feels like by taking away lying in the world, that the world will become a much better place and it'll become a much more honest place. And in this episode, we basically see that. We see how his idea of the perfect world plays out. And so we meet basically what you would call three couples that are going through individual things in their lives, right? And within sort of like the dynamic, and it takes place within one diner. What I loved about this episode is it doesn't change scenes. It literally stays in one place, but specifically three different areas within this specific location. And I loved this episode because I was like, how are they going to make an entire fucking episode in a diner? And they did it. They fucking did it in a way where I was like, holy shit. And to be fair, it revealed a lot of things about human nature that we kind of already know, but we kind of don't necessarily see and face in like sort of reality in that way. And Dream was not present pretty much in, I would say, about 7/8 of the entire episode. He only comes in at the last 8. Go ahead.
And in the comic, like he comes in at the last fucking page.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it felt, right? Like,
yeah.
And so we meet this lovely girl who is a waitress at the diner, who seems just very kind, very innocent, and she's here. She helps John D. She helps this other couple, and she helps this other woman who comes in, is clearly having relationship issues. She helps this guy who clearly is trying to get in on this internship to a huge corporation, who the previous couple who came in is like the woman is the owner of this corporation, and like her husband is like, going on. And then you have Marsh, who is the cook in there, who so it's this multifaceted episode where all these lives are sort of intertwined, and then sort of you see sort of some upheaval going on with John D as he takes away their ability to lie, right? So that's the gist of the entire episode. Of course, there are a lot of like consequences, and there's a lot of things that happen after. And you finally realize that, like, when Dream comes in, you realize that it's not necessarily the lies that he took away, but the ability for people to dream in a way where they want better for themselves, and they sort of become. It takes away that ability to dream better, and more along the lines of like, well, this is reality. Nothing's going to get better. So we're going to just kill, right? Like we're going to give into sort of like the things that we desire, which we get a glimpse of desire in the last like 2 seconds of the episode, right? Which is Dreams. So Jefferson, how did it relate to the comics? What did the episode do for you? Let's talk about that.
This was the episode I was looking forward to the most, because this was the storyline of Sandman that got me really interested in what this whole book was about. I guess like in a way, when I was like looking up like what were the scariest stories, this popped up as one of the biggest ones of DC Comics. Like, why Sandman? I thought that was a fantasy book. And when I was reading it, and again when I was rereading it again a little bit earlier with the audiobook on, it's so haunting. This plays out like a horror movie. This is like, do you know what a bottle episode is?
Yeah,
you're familiar with the bottle. Yeah, this was absolutely a bottle episode but in the horror movie variety. This was just 8 or so characters, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 if you count death, just innocent people trying to live their life, and in comes one fucking asshole who's just like, let me see what this does. And it's just this sense of hopelessness. Like, you're reading it and it's like where is Morpheus? Where is Dream in all this? And that sense of hopelessness just keeps permeating throughout the story and the book. And right when the last page hits, it's like, wow, you're too late. I wish you got here sooner. But this story, compared to the book, very damn near close. I character motivations were still there. All the great beats were there. The only thing that didn't make this pitch perfect to me was that it was missing a scene with a dinosaur hand puppet on TV gets its it gets its trigger warning, its wrist slid off. They didn't show that. And I was like, okay, I think that might have been too much. But then they showed everything else, like the eye with Bet. It wasn't Bet in the comic, but somebody else. It was somebody else in the comic. But the eye thing that happened in the comic too. Man, like this episode hit, dude. Like, was this a turning point for a lot of people? I bet, like for what they thought what the show was. I want to say, was this that turning point for some people?
I mean, Bill, let's go to you since we've hit Jefferson. How did you feel about this episode? Was it a turning point for you in the episode? Was it like a weird, like, whoa? How did you feel?
I mean, so again, I came into the series not being familiar, other than like I said in our last episode, the iconography of it, because there's no way to be around comics at all and not know at least the art and the style. But so I didn't know the story at all. And so on the one hand, it actually feels like the first 5 episodes of Sandman kind of comprise like the first arc, and then 6 through 10 is kind of like the back half of it, and it makes 2 nice little packages. And you're right about it being basically a bottle episode, which is for our sci-fi fans is when they keep all the characters on the ship and they don't go anywhere, so it saves on the budget. You don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But this feels very much kind of like it could have been a stage play. It felt like it was classic episode. Various of the original Twilight Zones were set. Just
oh my god!
Remember how that kind of worked out? Remember the one with the aliens one's from Martian, one's from Venus, and they're in the.
That's the big spoiler, Bill.
All that. Remember that? Spoiler. Dude, it's 70 years ago. If they haven't seen it by now, that's their problem.
I love that plot twist, though, dude. Like, but yeah, continue. Yeah.
But it's like it's that whole, it's that sort of thing, and now you have people in there, and then you're kind of unraveling the layers of the onions of the people and their stories. So with regards to this being Sandman, this could have been a standalone thing by itself, unrelated to anything else, and it's just a character study about people. And though we did need to know John's kind of why is he so angry and why is he fucking with these people, because he is kind of granting the wish of taking away their obstructions, but he's doing it in a way that he knows is going to be destructive to them, as opposed to granting them their wishes in a way that would set them free, but it would do it without them, killing each other in various and spectacular ways, or themselves. And I think that's kind of where, he's making that choice kind of because of what happened to him, and he's kind of batshit to begin with. And Sandman, like you said, it comes in at the end, but it's really not his story. This is about everybody else and what they're going, what's hiding underneath the surface. And it could be the talking about the inner demons of humans, and or is it more that he's kind of taken their dreams and twisted them into nightmares? Is this what they wanted to do, and now he's setting them free? And that's just various aspects to it. But I really enjoyed it. As we get to it, I liked 6 more as an episode, but this I definitely appreciate as to what they were doing and how they were kind of doing. You pause the entire story arc. This wasn't a slow burn episode. This was like, we're going to do a complete, it's not even a side quest. It's just let's do a character piece, period. And
for all intents and purposes, it was a filler episode until the very end.
Yeah, and that's just kind of like, oh, by the way, we're in the rest of this series. We should have the lead back in. So yeah.
I think too. I think you're right. Like, I think I mentioned it last time. So let's also touch on the fact that, like, in the last episode, we do see John D, who sort of gets the crystal from his mom, and then he like makes his journey with this lovely woman who's got a family, who's got a dog, right? And basically, he gives the helm of protection to her after all of this stuff, because basically she learns that he's crazy, but at the same time, she still is very kind to him. And then he basically is like, I don't need it anymore. I have this, I have the ruby. It's fine. Which leads him to this episode, which is episode 5. Let's hit the comments really quick before we do anything. So Q says, I binged the whole series, and let's just say I'm shook at the very end. Barnaby said, absolutely agree on episode 6 being very emotional. We'll talk about that. I shed a tear. I'm sorry for both of you. I'm sorry for everybody, but
I want to ask you a question. And I want to ask you all the same question. Did you all know that there was a surprise episode released last week?
I just found out today.
So Q, are you really done with the show, or do you have one more left?
So I'm gonna watch it after we get off. I was on IMDb, like looking up credits and all that stuff, and then I was like, 11. Yeah. I was like, there's only 10 fucking things. But Q also made a comment really quick. In my mind, I think that episode shows that lying is not okay, but the characters in the episode feel like they have to lie to live the life they always want, or they are not happy in their life, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. It's funny because I was watching, in conjunction with watching Sandman, I'm watching like happier shows, and there's one episode of the show that I'm watching, this Japanese drama that I'm watching, and it just showed that like lies can be beautiful. Like some lies can be necessary if you want to live your, I guess, like live a life that you want to eventually make or come true. And I think like, gosh, like I lost my train of thought. But anyways, some lies are necessary.
I mean, and that was true. I think that was a sort of thought process that I was doing during this, where he's asking people basically like why they lie, like but in the previous episode, in episode 4, there was, he asked the individual that was driving him, he said, do you lie to your children? And she was like, well, yeah, sometimes I do, because there's certain things that, and in my head, I'm like, there's certain things that children shouldn't be exposed to, like early on in life. And little white lies sort of like are necessary in order for them to just live their life in a way where they're protected. And then maybe when they're older, explain why this sort of stuff happens. Right. But in this episode, all these individuals are adults. Right. And like, there's little lies that sort of like you can see add up to the end, where basically they end up fucking mutilating each other. They murder each other. They're like having sex with each other. Like these two guys are just like going at it. And the thing that got me was when Marsh told Bet that like the only reason why he goes over is to have sex with her son. And I'm sitting there like, well, and my dad walked in, and I was like, go in the back room. Don't like, no, like, and my dad's cool. Like he would have watched it, but it was a thing where I was like, holy shit, like this is going to be a deep episode. Right. And yeah,
man, to compare it again, the comic says something like that, but not to the extent of what the show said.
Right.
The comic I thought was still a lot more haunting, but when Marsh said that straight up, where in the comic was implied, I was like, whoa. Oh, okay. That's someone wrote that. Okay, cool. Okay.
which I mean, if you really look down at, like, that was a lie that he was doing, right? Like in his life, to get some sort of deeper thing where he wasn't ready to admit that he was either gay, or like he, or he'd like to fuck with younger boys, right? Like, but and it just, this whole episode deals with like, which I appreciate it. And I think as fucked up as this episode was, it really made me appreciate the fact that like the producers, the writers, the actors, Neil Gaiman, they're not afraid to go there, right? Like they're not afraid, and it works for them in a way where I'm like, you can't really like see this shit unless you're watching like Game of Thrones, and then it's like, oh, that's understandable because it was like old medieval like this is modern now, this is what's going on. And I sort of just, I don't know, in that episode, and especially in the next episode and other ones, like it feels good to be seen in a way where it's like, yeah, it was a fucked up episode, but also it's kind of normal, right? Like it's kind of like a normal thing to happen, and it's okay. Right. I mean, it's not okay for this shit to kind of happen, but like it just sort of was just like, oh, right, in a way where it was just sort of, I don't know. It's just great to see that on sort of like something as big as this, where it's on Netflix in a series, where it's just really, it's really great to see that. Do we have anything else to say about episode 5? Anything you want to add, Jefferson, Bill?
John D was a little more forgiving in this show, I want to say. I forgot to mention that in not that I forgot to mention, just I wasn't there. Episode 4, that lady that he's driving with, he shoots her and dies in the comic. And it's like when I was waiting for it in episode 4. At the end of it, I was like, all right, this is when it happens. I'm gonna feel something. And when he let her go, I was like, oh, damn, this John's a little more still an asshole, but like has standards, has a bit of a heart, so it's kind of hard. I thought it was gonna be hard to like. I thought they were gonna like neuter the entire episode 5, the diner episode, and I was like, I was just like, oh man, if this John can let her go, they're not gonna show that much in the diner episode. And I was like, oh shit, I'm glad I'm wrong.
Right?
Are you sure?
The ending of this episode 5, was an entire. It's the following issue. The entire conflict between the resolution of the conflict between John and Morpheus is the next issue, and I'm glad that they made it this episode for it to be the conclusion, because it does fit more narratively on a TV standpoint.
Now I do have to ask. Sorry, Bill. Before we get to you, did Morpheus put him in an eternal sleep? Was that his punishment?
That's what I saw too. Yeah.
Okay.
Eternal sleep. Another person way in the beginning of the series had eternal waking. I saw eternal sleep for John D. Yeah. So he's just sleeping forever. Yeah.
Yeah. And because he was like, I'm not going to kill you, but he's like, but you're not going to ever be able to wake up. So anyway, right. Bill, any last minute comments on episode 5?
Trying to think about it. Not really over the whole thing. It just it lets you kind of poke a bit into John. I was kind of expecting to be a little bit more like Hannibal Lecter in that, Lecter only eats people who are rude, right?
Yeah.
Not good people intrinsically. And so that's why, not knowing the series, in the previous episode when he lets her go, it's like, okay, he makes, he has some insights into people's inner workings and will make a call. And so I kind of expected actually the waitress to end up being cut loose in Diner.
I did too. Yeah,
as a writer, it's like she would have been the one that I would have thought that he would have taught her a lesson as a cautionary tale, but then sent her on her way. But when she's like stabby, it's like, okay, no, he's just that's where it kind of goes. And it's like it talks about, there's the difference between lies to make one's life, less chaotic and whatnot, and lies where you are deceiving yourself about who your true nature is. And it can be talking about the one guy and the son. It could be various other characters in that diner that are like the lies between the VP and her trophy husband. That it's like that none of that stuff was healthy, and so that's understandable. But someone that maybe does lies about her job is what she really wants to, she'll tell people that she's happy, but she really wants to be a writer, stuff like that. That's a very different kind of a thing than self-denial, kind of a lie. And so that's where it's kind of at it. Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, even though it went, for me, it showed that when humans are stripped of like their sort of like their dreams and the way that they want to achieve more, the way that we deal with that is we then start to either blame, or then we start to like not want to sort of internalize how we have things that we need to work on in order to progress and get to the places that we need to get. And even though it was sort of like magic that was sort of working its way through these people, we could see a worldwide effect, right? Where basically like people were fucking, like they were killing each other, and Dream had to come in and say, no, that's not, you didn't steal people's lives. Like what you did is you stole their dreams, you stole their ability to think better for themselves, and it destroyed the world. And this was the world that you wanted to create. And he even says in the end, he's like, it's going to take a day to rebuild all this. But he's like I did what I could, and like that's what happened. So let's go to episode 6. Man, this episode, holy mother of God.
Yeah.
I'm watching this episode, and first we see Dream. He's sulking on a bench in a park, and um, God knows what he's thinking about. He's feeding some birds some bread, and who knows? Some individual comes over, and at first I was like, "Is this a human?" Like she's being really crass with death and like all this stuff. And usually, sometimes they can choose to be seen or not be seen, right? And I was like, "What's going on?" And then as I sort of started to get their relationship, I was like, oh, like she knows this person. And then I was like, oh, this is death. And the only reason why I knew that is because in the actual thing, she wears a necklace with an ankh on it, which if you can see behind me is the comic book version of death with a huge ankh. And I was like, I loved her literally from the first 5-10 minutes of the entire episode. I was obsessed. I'm like, I want to, I hope they go on a journey. And basically, you can kind of tell, and especially in the comics that I read, Jefferson, is that Death and Dream have the best relationship out of all of his siblings.
That's right.
And he, basically he starts asking about how's everybody been? Why didn't you come? Blah, 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 blah. And she's like, let me walk with you. And in this entire episode, so in the first half, we have him following Death around, sort of doing her job, right? Which basically is to go to individuals that are going to die or that have died and take them. And we don't necessarily see her true form, which is her guiding sort of like these souls to the underworld or wherever they need to go. But we see shadows of it, right? We see shadows of wings, and we see sort of like the shadow of what's going on. And we see her and him go on several different journeys of her going to different people that are dying or that have already died. And she's like, well, I got a job to do, but if you want to come, you can do it. Then we get privy to the fact that Dream has made a deal with an individual who claims that he cannot die. And this is back in the 1500s, 1400s?
1300s, 1338.
Yeah, so,
I want to say.
Yes, it starts out. Okay, thank you. It starts out in the 1300s, and basically he is teasing his sister, and his sister says, "Huh?" He's talking a lot of talk, and he said, "Well," he was like, he basically makes it an experiment and says, "I think in 100 years he's going to change his mind about not dying," and Death basically says, "Do you want me to grant his wish? Like, I cannot let him die, like, for you. And you can just sort of, like, see what happens." And Death is like, or Dream's like, cool, let's do it. So basically he makes himself known to the guy, and the guy's like, cool, like, who are you? Like, I don't know who you are. And Dream basically goes, I'll meet you here in 100 years, the same exact spot, same exact pub. I love that it's in a pub. It's amazing because, everything social, everything actionable happens in a pub. And we see the latter half of this episode every 100 years, right? Like, he meets this guy, right? And it just becomes a way for Dream to become more human, right? Like, more humanized in the way that he deals with us and the way that he deals with it. And this guy basically is like, I love living, right? Like, in the first 100 years, he's like, this is great. He's like, this is awesome. The next 100 years, he's like, I got a freaking business. I'm rich. I'm doing all this stuff, right? And then we see in 300 years, he's like, I fucking hate it. He's like, my kid died. My wife died. I lost all my money. He's like a transient, right? Like, he's just miserable. And then Death goes, okay, or Dream goes, okay, so then you don't like living. And he's like, no, like, I wouldn't trade this for anything. He's like, even though I've done all this hardship, like, I appreciate what's going on, right? And so if you haven't seen it, it's an amazing episode. I cried when Death was just revealing all these just truths to him. And one of the things that struck me was she basically was like, the hardest thing I had to realize was that I'm not here. Well, they're not here for us. Like, they don't necessarily like believe in us, right? Like, we're here for them. Like, we're here to serve them, right? Like, in the capacity that we're doing. So I loved it. It was an amazing episode. Let's get to talking about how we felt about it. Bill, how did you feel about episode 6?
Well, it sounds like I want to kick towards the back half of the episode first, because you kind of deep dived into that. And I really dug it. I mean, that whole transition, 100 years, and how the fortunes of him go up and down. And it both lends itself some insight into humanity for Dream, as well as because he kept expecting him to come in like, no, I'm tired. All my friends are dead. Kill me. And even when he's rock bottom in the gutter, the guy's no, this is brilliant. I'm gonna keep on going. Um the and it's the whole aspect that he kind of finds out about humans, and then also about himself, right? This is the one time, because I've mentioned before in the last couple episodes about how what's been interesting about Dream is he's really not human. I mean, and that's delightfully clear. And I love how they really don't even attempt to make it seem like he's kind of person-like. He's not like Data wanting to become human. However, at the tail of this, when he's like, it's impolite to keep a friend waiting, that's a big step for him to actually let himself connect with someone. Though on the flip side, he's obviously connected with other non-mortal beings before, right? Because we established that in other tag, actually in episode 11. Spoilers. And
I haven't seen it.
I know. Good kitty. You're never going to look at cats again the same.
Oh no.
But that whole progression of time and where it's at, yeah, it's very convenient that he happened to be there at the end when Dream shows up, and there he is doing the books and all that kind of thing. But granted that just like how for you guys 24/7 kind of resonated, this is probably my single favorite episode for me was this one, both from the first half, almost a little bit more the first half than the second half, because some of the places that they took it, but this one I thought was all the way around. I love this episode.
Yeah, it was just honestly, like, the way that I can describe this episode is beautiful. Like, if somebody were to ask me, like, how could it was beautifully done, in a way where it like made me feel all the feels, right? Before we get to you, Jefferson, let me get to some of the comments. Q says we can agree that Neil Gaiman was very influenced by Edgar Allan Poe in writing the comics, and also shows writing have that feel too. Barnaby said the depiction of death really pulls off the idea the show was going for. Before this episode, I never thought of death as a comforting figure. It was so lovely to witness. And then Q says episode 6 got me in the feels and having Dream understanding of death's job. Also, Joanna shows up in the episode. It was like, oh shit. Right. And like in the episode, I think it was episode 3 where he, it's like all about Joanna Constantine, all that stuff. Dream says really quick, like, oh, I had interactions with one of your predecessors, right? And we see that in this episode where she's like, something's going on. I brought 2 henchmen. Who are you? And it was like a hearsay where it was like, I heard that the devil in a man that cannot die comes and meets at this bar. And then Dream's like, you're really like, you're wrong. You're like off. Like you're off. And then she's like, no, I'm not. And then
I'm not even Jewish.
Yeah. And then basically like, Ha basically just like fucking annihilates the 2 men. And then Dream's like, oh, I'm just going to put her in I'm going to make her see her demons in a way that she hasn't done it. Which I thought was beautifully done. And Jenna Coleman's amazing. And I always love her and everything she does. But I kind of want to come back to a point that Bill said where, and I want to make it a point where Dream basically, because he gets trapped for those 100 years, he doesn't meet with Hob for that meeting. And he tells Death in the beginning, it's like, I missed an appointment. And we're like, what appointment did you miss? Like, your Dream, like, you don't fucking have appointments. Like, you are the appointments. And then basically he goes back to the bar and the pub that was established there, and it's basically like in ruin. It's like demolished. But then there's a sign pointing to the new, right? Like the new pub that's going on. And he goes in there and he basically, before this happened, has a fight with him and basically says, the guy says, I think you meet with me because you don't have any friends. Like, you don't have any real connection. And Dream's like, no, like, that's not it. And like, basically becomes one of those like antisocial, like, you don't know what the fuck I want, but that's what I want, but I'm not going to admit it to you. And then long story short, at the very end of the episode, he's basically like, oh, well, I don't like to keep my friends waiting. And it becomes a thing where you kind of see how he is just, I don't know, like the only word I can put is like the humanization, like the humanity of these entities that that basically we experience every day, right? Jefferson, what did you think about episode 6?
Man, okay. I was about to like look up a meme because something you said reminded me of a meme, and I want to pull that up real quick and make it my background for a second.
Yeah. I can.
But in general, like this following 24/7 is probably my favorite 2 hours of television in a long time, and they don't directly complement each other, but they're like a great double feature of two like dissonant things. One, of course, is just this I guess like a really depressing horror movie, but then there's this other thing that just celebrates death, and it's like,
yeah,
I don't know how I don't know how anyone could just celebrate death in the way that this show did or the comic did, but it did just show it as just this beautiful thing. And I know there are like emo songs that show how beautiful death is, but man, to see, I'm sure MCR has sang many songs about like how beautiful death is. There's a whole album about it, but to just see it all visually through a personification of death, it hit different. It really does. What else to say? The second half of the episode, Hob, that I didn't expect to see that. I'm going into these episodes, I guess like I'm savoring each one. I'm not like binging it all the way through, but like I did not expect to see Hob this early. Hob was a character that comes in the teens of the issues, like 13 or 14-ish, and I didn't expect to see him here. And I'm not like it's not that I didn't like it. It's like, oh man, then it's only half the episode is really about death, but still, like it was still a great part B of the episode. Like it still does like go hand in hand with what happens in part A.
Yeah, and I think you have a good point. Like it's a weird contrast between like 5 and 6, where you're like, so we had all this death just happen, right? Like people were killing each other and like all this stuff, and like we just had to realize that like we're naturally like vicious people, like all this stuff, and then you get introduced to death, who's like, no, it's natural. I think for me, the episode taught me that like even all the siblings, like we go through that. That is the human experience, right? Like these people that these 7 sort of entities that we encounter that start with D, all of them start with D. We experience that in our human lives. Like we're going to experience death eventually, right? Desire, destruction. We dream all the time. Delirium, right? There's been times like I have just stayed up for 24 hours. I'm fucking delirious as hell, right? Like we're going to experience all of this in our lives. And I think this episode just put that in perspective, where it was like a lot of people fear death. And the way that she sort of put it was like, when people die, they don't want to see somebody that's like, all right, come on, hurry up. Like, or something that's scary, right? Like they want to see something that is comforting, that is going to let them know that like, hey, like, sorry, like you're dead. Especially that guy that like drowned in that river, right? Like where that family was going, right? Like, hey, hey, like, and he's like, no, like I just need to tell her one thing, and she's like, sorry, like you can't, like you're already dead, but let me help you. And she does it in a way where she's like, I do it with a smile on my face, and I'm like, we don't think of death like that. We think of death as this painful, awful, negative void of an experience. And this episode puts it in a way where it's like, no, like there's some comfort in this experience. And so I felt like that was just beautiful, right? Oh, is that it? Is that the meme?
That's so Morpheus be like, nah, you're not my friend. I don't need you.
10 minutes later,
100 years later, me and the bestie. Where is it? Right there. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Basically, like they had spent hundreds and hundreds of years together, and the guy was like, come on, like you can't say that we're not friends. Like we live through all this, we do all this stuff. So
I thought that was Owen Wilson's brother. I thought that was Patrick Wilson for a second. It's like, oh, is that Patrick Wilson? I don't know who it is. I didn't check the credits, but I thought it was Patrick Wilson.
wait, I just had it up. It was not Patrick. I don't think it was Patrick Wilson.
Pat Wilson, is that his name? Or am I thinking of Stargirl? Anyways, another point I wanted to talk about was that there was a moment that called back to my favorite quote in episode 3 when there was a mention of heaven, and it's just had a quick shot back to Morpheus, and you could just see, maybe it's the actor, maybe it's the character, it's both, but right when the mention of heaven happens, it cuts to Morpheus, and you can tell he's thinking about that quote that he said to Lucifer. What power does do dreams have in heaven, if not for people that dream of fucked it up. What power do dreams have in hell were not for people who dream of heaven? That one. Yeah. And that's just, God, that's so poignant.
Yeah. And so the actor that played Hob Gadling was Ferdinand Kingsley, who did a phenomenal job at that. But also, I want to give props to Kirby Howell-Baptiste, who played Death, who did a fucking amazing job. We never see her again in the entire series, and I'm pissed because like she did absolute justice to it. I don't know how it relates to the comic or the books, but I don't think it could have gone any better.
Perfect casting, honestly. Like, I know it wasn't everyone's first choice. I guess it wasn't my first choice, but like after seeing the casting, it's like as long as it does not matter who plays Death race wise, as long as they can get the character and the intentions of this character correct. That's all that matters. And everyone bitching about like, oh, I wanted my pale skin goth mommy. No,
tired of that. We're tired of that.
Yeah,
like we're not.
She played it perfectly. The wholesomeness of her, the warmness of her, absolutely stole the show of that episode. I mean, I haven't of course not past episode, but still.
Yeah, I think for me, and we'll talk about this in later episodes. I think for me, the only issue I have with casting is Rose. I feel like they could have done a little bit better. It could have also just been the direction of acting, like for Rose. I feel like, and I don't know how Rose is in the books, but I just feel like she's too innocent. She's too like, ooh, and then we'll talk about this later. And I think after episode 6, besides the Corinthian, who I have a huge crush on, who's played by Hallbrook. I can't remember his first name.
I only have eyes for him.
What's his name?
I only have edible eyes for Corinthian. That's all I have.
Wasn't it like Boyd or Boyd something?
Oh, Boyd Hallbrook. Boyd Hallbrook.
Yeah.
Love it. But I think I think up until this point, the casting has been spot on, right? Like it's just been like the people that are playing this, like they did the job, right? Like it doesn't matter race, blah blah blah. And I know that we want to be like, culturally sensitive and like diverse and all that stuff, but like these people they showed up and they did the job. They auditioned and they gave us exactly what we wanted to.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. So in the comments, Hugh says, death is a long, painful reality, but we don't see that angel of death calmly and easily led our departed into the universe without any fear or pain anymore. You're right. We don't see that. But in this episode, it sort of gives us a glimpse into that. And Barnaby said, Hod Gadling is played by Ferdinand Kingsley, who did an amazing job. And just, I thought it was like, he hit the ball, out of the park, and it was really great. Do we have any, let's see, do we have any last minute comments about 5 and 6? Was there anything that you wanted added to, Jefferson, about like the book that maybe wasn't added into 5 and 6? Was there anything from 6 that you thought?
There was a lot more different lives that Death meets. A couple more. but I think that the amount that they had and the impact that each one had was enough for this episode. Especially the baby and Franklin. The
Right.
baby,
Oh, the baby.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
That was just one page in the comic, and it's just right. Hold on, it's just one page in the comic, and it's just
It was so good. I
heartbreaking. Yeah,
appreciated that the way that they did it. I
one
like that they didn't overplay it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They didn't sit
Yeah.
there and really dwell on the mom. You don't even hear the mom other than her calling to the
you
baby.
do
But
in the comic.
but the thing is, in the show, you
Ah.
didn't need to, because
Yeah,
everything was there. The horror was when Death picked up the baby, and that's just kind of like a simple thing. But then, even as Death is talking again, you talked about the casting and how she performed it. It's soothing. It's comforting. It sucks, but it's okay. And things will move on. And it's like the first Jewish gentleman, that when you should let him have his moment to pray first and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of these elements made that whole thing so good, and she did it so well that it's again, she wasn't gloating, she wasn't doing, she was doing what she was there for, and it made it gives insights into the what the Eternals
Endless.
endless, what the endless are like, in that they're not there to make a judgment, they're simply doing the and this episode really rocked it. It's like, it's always hard when you have really decent series or good series or great series, and as I settle with Sandman, I think it's settling for me as being a really, really good series. Great, I don't know, but this is the sort of episode, like, these are the episodes that get nominated for Emmys.
Yeah,
because it stands
absolutely.
Because
I think too. Going back to, I think it shows also their power, right? Like, because we know that they have certain power over us, and I think, like, especially with Gadling.
Gadling.
We see that Death can be like, all right, well, I'm not going to let him die, and like, just that quick, right? And I think that, like, with these episodes, especially with things like 24/7, where it's like, yeah, humans can control their powers, but at the end of the day, like, it's ultimately them, right? Like, that can essentially do that. It shows that while they have ultimate power over us, they don't necessarily, like, put that on us in a way where it's like, well, I'm gonna punish you because I want to, right? Where it's like, Dream in the beginning feels like he's this, like, godlike entity, when Death is like, nah, like, I'm gonna put you in your place. Like, you're here to serve them, and like, if they deserve punishment, then it's our job to do that, right? But like, if it's something too, like, where it's like playful, where it's like, cool, like, this guy thinks he can't die, all right, like, I'm not gonna let him die, like, and then you're just gonna, like, see how it works out, right? And I think it just shows how the Endless have sort of, like, ultimate power over us, but in the end, like, what does that matter to one person when they have 7.5 billion people to, you know what I mean, to, like, to watch over and do all that stuff. So, Jefferson, any last minute thoughts?
Let's see. Let's see. Was there? I wish more stories within comic books, like, talked about the fragility of life. I think too many things just, like, see it as just this novelty. Like, like, even with video games, to be perfectly honest, like, it's just death happens and I can just press a button and come back. I wish that, like, if I don't know, it's very soapboxy, but I do wish that, like, more stories talked about how beautiful life is in the moment and what you do with it
without proselytizing.
Yeah.
Man,
absolutely.
I cheered up. I'm not. Yeah, this was. Oh God, this episode was powerful.
It was, like I said, I think 6 was my favorite out of the entire series. After 7, it just all goes downhill, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I don't like. I was like sitting there watching it. I'm like, what? Yeah. Anyway, but hopefully you'll join me on
watch them.
yes, hopefully you can join me on my chat and streams and do all that stuff because I'm just interested to see what other people are. I gotta watch it again just to kind of get a perspective, and I'm gonna watch episode 11 tonight because I'm like, what? Like it got released and all that stuff. So I'm really excited. But other than that, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jefferson. I'm always so happy to have you join me on this and to sort of just talk about it.
Always a blast.
Like I said, yeah, I love the Sandman. This is turning out to be one of my favorite freaking series ever. And so I'm so excited to see what they have coming up next. Thank you all for tuning. Yeah, go. Yeah.
One last thing. There's actually a really well-made fan film of 24/7 Diner on YouTube that basically has every beat. And prior to the show, that was it. That was our live action Sandman for a long time. It's beautifully done. Obviously not the budget of a Netflix show, Warner Brothers show, but yeah, no, beautifully done. And it was the standard for a live action Sandman for the fan base for a while.
I gotta check that out. I gotta
on YouTube, yeah, it's super free. It's 30 minutes.
Woo! I love 30-minute. It's so like when I wake up like early in the morning, like at 3 a.m, and I can't go back, I like watch like 30-minute things, and I'm like, okay, I can go to bed. So I'm gonna definitely watch that because I'll probably not go to bed after it, but definitely we all should watch that. Well, that's all the time we have to talk about. Episodes 5 and 6 of The Sandman. If you haven't watched them, please watch them. All these episodes are available on Netflix. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to join our Discord to keep the conversation going. Shout out to my guests, Bill and Jefferson. It's so awesome to see you all. Thank you all for joining. Giving your time. Yeah, absolutely. Where can we find you, Jefferson? On the socials, anywhere? Where can we find you? In space, in person?
I'm in prehistoric times as Jeffersaurus on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. That Twitch is now. Yeah, that's Jeffersaurus with a W.
Jeffersaurus. We love it. We love
and
it.
If anyone's going to the Power Ranger convention, I'll be there.
Whoa! I'm excited. Bill, where can we find you?
Bill RW and the number 3 on all hailing frequencies.
Beep, beep, beep. I love it. I freaking love it. You can find me on Instagram, City of Stars 13. I'm trying to get out there on everything else because this is what I know and love to do. I love everything nerd, everything geeky, all that other stuff. So keep in touch and keep tuned to everything. You can listen to the show on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or where you get your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch. All of our platforms are at Nom Talk Network. I also want to give a shout out to our lovely producer, Steph. We love you. Thank you for doing all these things for us. Thank you for, right? Like in between your job and life, like who are you? Human? What are you? Mega human? Steph is an endless. And awesome. we can just call her the Big D. That's what I'm going to call her.
I was going to ask, like, what would her D be?
She's the Big D, period. That's what it is. Anyway, tune in to our next show, which is going to be Friday. And they will be doing She-Hulk episode 2, which if you haven't seen episode 1, catch it. It's amazing. I loved it. I can't wait for episode 2 to come out. So until then, I'm your host, Jordyn Orozco, and I hope you have a phenomenal evening. See y'all later. Bye.